Good here. Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Richardson Plano Networkers. So I'm sure we've all wondered, what will the new normal look like? What it'll feel like, what it'll look like, and my God, when will it happen? Well, today we might get some insight into that. Lin O'Neill is a trainer, a speaker, a consultant, and a coach. She's been a successful small business owner for more than 20 years. She's also a former vice president and board member for Continental Airlines and a former human resources director for TRW. In addition to her training, speaking, consulting, and coaching, Lin is currently serving as lead faculty for the DFW Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, 10KSB, and for the National Blended 10,000 Small Business Program at Babson College in Wellesley, Massachusetts. Yay, Massachusetts. She's a DFW instructor for the SBA's Emerging Leaders, aka E200 program, advisory board member for Network Bar, member SMU's Associate Board, and board member for the Tea Exchange Dallas. Please welcome today's guest, Lin O'Neill.
Thank you so much, Randy. And thank you all for being here. It's always, listen, any day I get to see Mako and Debbie Mrazek and all of you, it's a banner day. So I'm going to go buy a lotto ticket immediately. I'm going to share my screen and pull up my slides here. Let's see. Okay. Give me a thumbs up, would you, if you can see the slide. Oh, good. Okay, wonderful. So, first of all, I'm excited to be here, as I mentioned, and that is from my heart. And I just really want to echo the comments about how nice it is to get to know people. I'm as surprised as anyone at how effective Zoom can be in keeping us all connected. Our brains and our hearts, which are equally important. And I, like all of you, have just really ruminated, as my grandfather would say, on where's all this going and what is it going to look like? So I was especially delighted to have an opportunity to talk about the future of work. So I've been looking at that. And by the way, I am intensely informal. So if you have a burning question as we go through, don't wait till the end, because those always slip back into the subconscious, or we forget to ask them. So just jump in if you've got one, and I'll adjust my timing to meet your needs. I'd rather answer your questions than get through my agenda. So how's that? Does that work for everybody? Yeah? Okay, great. So just to start us off, we're talking about the future of work. And I was really a little bit astounded, I guess is the best way to say it, when the pandemic first started and people just kept saying things like, oh, I just can't wait until we get back to normal. And to use a Texas-ism, it ain't gonna happen. So let me put your mind at ease right now and say that wherever we came from entering this time, the chances of being back there pretty much are slim and none. And I don't know that that is a bad thing at all. I actually think that it gives us a chance for an opportunity to recreate the life that we want. So that's my outlook on this whole situation. So just to further that thought a little bit, normal life ahead, no. And the thing I want to add about this slide is for a lot of people, they think that the new normal, whatever that is, that it will just involve masks and social distancing and lots of Zoom calls. I submit that we don't have any idea where this is going, and particularly on the tech side. And so my encouragement is not to log in to this and think, oh, this is what it's going to be like, because in truth, we don't have a clue. And it's kind of interesting to me that in looking at the virus and how it has morphed, is to find out that there were just a number of public-private partnerships that have been studying the potential for a pandemic over the last decade. And one of the reasons we were able to push a vaccine out as quickly, for which I'm grateful, I got my first shot on Monday, yay. And because being 77, they pushed me right to the head of the line. So this is great, and for me, and I hope you all get yours. And but one of the things about that is those public-private partnerships, which I believe will be something we'll see even more of in the future. Kind of the Warren Buffett, how are you contributing? What's your legacy going to be? Those kinds of activities, I think, are going to constitute even more of the new normal than face masks and social distancing. So when I thought about how do I want to get into this topic, I'm a book person. I heard some of you refer to that, so I'm happy to know that I'm on with a bunch of book folks. But I went back and pulled some thoughts from times that started in 1970, so over the last 50 years. Just a kind of funny aside, at one point in my life, I owned the initial printing of Future Shock, and I owned the initial printing of John Nesbitt's Megatrends. Yesterday, I found myself driving to Plano and then scooting over to Las Colinas because I had to go to Half Price Books to find them because I had somehow donated them. And I will never do that again because, interestingly enough, if you are so young that you have never read these, which is certainly a possibility with this group, or if it's been just such a long time that you've forgotten, let me encourage you to go back and take a look at them. So starting with the kind of wisdom that I think gives us a context and a basis for what's coming. Alvin Toffler in 1970, when he published Future Shock, and he did a number of really wonderful books, by the way, The Third Wave is equally impressive. But the thing that I always remember from Future Shock, and this is almost a direct quote, is Toffler said, if you take the time since humans began recording history, and if you divide that into lifetimes of 75 years, and if you lay those lifetimes end to end, there had been more acceleration, more change, if you will, in the lifetime that wasn't even over yet when he published that book in 70, than in all the rest of those 75-year lifetimes pushed together. And it was the first time in my professional career or personally that I had run across the acceleration of change idea. But that's my worst fear. My furry coworkers obviously believe in change and want to weigh in. Come here, come on. I apologize for them. Normally they're at Camp Bow Wow. So Future Shock is, thank you for bearing with my noisy coworkers here. Future Shock, and actually, you know, something is kind of funny that happened. So I'll put in a plug for this, because how many Zoom calls have you been on where someone's got their furry family member sitting on their lap? I mean, it has become a new way of living and working. And actually, this is probably a good point. I hadn't thought of this, but let me throw this in. One of the things that I object to in my early managerial training was that individuals, this was particularly true when I was getting my MBA, people said, you know, when you're talking to these errant employees, one of the things you must say to them is it's important that you leave, don't bring your personal life to work. Leave your personal life at home. So I want to ask you, you all seem like intelligent, wonderful folks. How would you do that physically? You know, my explanation of that is if you're going to leave your personal life at home, and this is sort of gory, so bear with me, but you'd have to shave your head, make an incision, kind of like what Randy did with his knife, make an incision on your forehead, peel back your scalp, gush around in your brain until you found the off button for your personal life, hit it, and then roll your scalp back, sew it up, and get some hair restore. But we told people this. We trained supervisors and managers and executives of all ilks. We said to them that this is important. And today, what we're saying, I hope, is nothing like that. And we're even saying, bring your animals, right? So I think that that's one of the we're going to have a much more personal life like setting for our workplace. That's something that we can be pretty generally assured of. So the comfort level for people being at work, that may mean they're working in their apartments or their homes, but the comfort level is likely to rise because people are going to be surrounded with people and with animals and with items filled with memories that help us all to be more comfortable. So Alvin Toffler told us that it would accelerate, and what he said has certainly been borne out in what we live. When John Nesbitt he and his wife did Megatrends, and they did 2 or 3 different books. The things that really stood out for me when I went back and picked up this book again yesterday, he talked about one of the trends, and this is from 1982, so it's been kicking around for a while, but he talked about forced technology. And if anybody thinks Zoom is not forced technology, methinks they should think again. I was in a meeting not too long ago, and someone said, if you believe that for Facebook or any of the software platforms that are free, if you think that you are the customer, you should think again, because in fact, you are the product. And if you think about that, that is really true. Is that going to intensify as we move into the future? You bet. It absolutely is. So I was really grateful to hear that, because it sort of helps me with my decision-making practice of, do I want to be their product or do I not? And of course, we do have that choice. But that was one of the things that Megatrend said. They also talked about centralization versus decentralization. And that topic, gosh, that's been kicking around in management circles for years and years. I don't know how many workshops I've been to on that topic, but it was incredible. The first company that I ever saw that was a living, breathing, decentralized company, and the best company for which I ever worked in my entire life, was TRW. Unfortunately, they had a drop in, maybe their earnings were just so beautiful. They were acquired, is what I'm working to say. But one of the things that they did is they lived and preached decentralization. So they pushed that decision making down. And if you think about some of the wisdom that's been made available over the years, I always think about the wonderful book, The Wisdom is in the Team. And I believe anybody who is struggling with a problem in today's workplace, you have to do nothing more than talk to your first line employees. Because not only do they know what's wrong, they know how to fix it. And some of us just struggle around because we're in more of an executive capacity. I got to tell you, it doesn't change the answers that we need, nor the resource we need to go to get that. And Nesbitt really talked about that a lot. And then I was searching for some books that had as much of an impact on me as those first 2. And to be really honest, I didn't find much. I had to go all the way to 2016. And if you've not read The Industries of the Future, run, don't walk to Amazon. In other words, get on your keyboard and have it delivered to you this afternoon or tomorrow. It was the business book of the year for 2016. Alec Ross worked, if you are a different thought process, I don't want to blight him by saying that he worked in Hillary Clinton's campaign, but he did get a lot. He was the technical advisor, looking at how they use technology to push that campaign forward. But he's a brilliant researcher, incredibly educated, And if you ever get a chance to hear him speak, he's just filled with knowledge. So the reason that this was important to me is AI and robotics are on the tip of everyone's tongue today, and those are key. So let me just tell you ever so briefly about one of the stories. In fact, it's in the first chapter of this book, and it deals with Japan. And Japan, in many people's eyes, most people's eyes probably, Japan is the leader in AI and robotics, and deservedly so. They have an issue, and it's an issue that's also faced in the United States. And that is that by 2030, they have an aging population. And by 2030, they need 1 million new caregivers. Part of the problem for them is that their immigration policy only allows in 50,000 folks a year, and not all of those folks are caregivers. So I'm no mathematician, to be sure, but you can't get there from here. And so being really enterprising and inventive as a culture, what the folks in Japan did is they went wholeheartely in to solve this issue with robotics. And they have robots that can do things like lift 165-pound senior. So if you're a senior with MS or you're bedfast and you need to be turned, your robot can do it. If you're a little kid and you need to brush your teeth, your robot, which by the way looks like a 165-pound teddy bear, it's kind of a scary thought, isn't it? But they can brush your teeth. They can read you a story. They can feed you if you're having trouble swallowing. It's the most amazing story that I've ever seen. And their number one social issue is they are sincerely afraid that people are going to fall in love with their robots. Because if you have your robot with you, that's the one consistent being in your entire life. You get them when you're a kid, they're with you until you're a senior. And so that's the closest person, the person with whom you shared your most personal experiences. So I can see the concern. And some of you may have seen the movie where the gentleman fell in love with a Siri-like person. That is kind of what Japan is wrestling with now. And we haven't even started to wrestle with in this country. So the Industries of the Future is probably the best book I've read since Future Shock in terms of laying out what kinds of dilemmas that we may face in this country. Then I have not read yet because it just arrived yesterday, but I had to include it. I like Steve Farber as an author. I think he's incredibly knowledgeable. And his new book, or his most recent book, I should say, is 2019, is Love is Just Damn Good Business. And the reason that I wanted to include this here is that partially because many of us were schooled to have business as one part of our lives, we compartmentalized, and personal as the other. And as I mentioned, that is pretty much going away. But so many people use the term soft skills derisively. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I got to go to this workshop and it's all about soft skills. The fact of the matter, if you don't like soft skills, you need to buckle up, because let me assure you that they are going to be here in full force and stronger than any of us have ever encountered. I'll come back to that topic a couple of slides down, but that is really important. And that, my understanding is, whoops, did not mean to do that. There we go. My understanding is that that is pretty much the guts of Love is Just Damn Good Business. Do I think that title is apropos? I do. So one of the things you're going to want to do is for the future is check your love meter. And I have to laugh a little bit because I remember telling a coworker in the 70s, gosh, I just love what you do. And having the HR person say to me, don't use the word love. You know, it may not be appropriate. Well, let me tell you, that's back in full swing as well. I'm looking at the disbelief on some of your faces now, and that's because you're probably younger and have not encountered that. But there was a time back when dinosaurs roamed the earth when we absolutely did not face up to those normal human needs for affection in the workplace and beyond. Then the non-obvious megatrends, I don't know that that is my favorite book, although Rohit Bhargava makes some wonderful observations. What it does talk to, though, and I think we probably, most of us at least, know that we're facing this, is how are you going to manage effectively? We've not managed accountability very well in this country. And that is going to be huge, because when you don't have people right there, when we're all working on our own, first of all, how do you know what to recognize and reward? And how do you know what to correct? And so that is going to be huge. When I ask people in workshops that I do, what do you think is the major trend? They tell me that it's getting people used to the technology. And in one segment of my life, I do the regulatory training for the 2,000 plus assisted living communities that comprise that industry in the state of Texas. And every time I do one of those, which is about 3 times a month, I'll have someone invariably say, this is my first Zoom call. And I just wonder where they have been. I find that it's just amazing to me, but they're sincere. So I'll take it at that. And we get them all plugged in and signed up and help them fall in love with Zoom. Well, in the non-obvious megatrends, there are a lot of people who have been untouched by this. They may have masked up, been socially distanced, and had all their food delivered by Grubhub. But the fact of the matter is, they have not bought in to the changing world. And a lot of them may be your employees or your customers, your clients. So one of the things that's going to be really important is for us to do more assessing than we've ever done about, quote, where people are, how they're feeling about where the world is. That is going to be further complicated, in my opinion, by the fact that we have very strong political beliefs in this country. And anyone who thinks that those are not going to come into the workplace, I believe really, I've got a great therapist that I will recommend to you. And I spent 40 years in California, and therapy is required there. So I've got a whole list of resources that I'll be happy to supply. But that is a non-obvious megatrend as well. The other megatrend that Rohit really emphasizes is the fact that the world is in fact getting smaller, that there's going to be much more mutual cooperation on things like our climate, environmental issues, those kinds of things. Then I saved this last book, and it's part of it is because it is a 2020 book, so more recent. But this is, and I'm going to touch on this topic in a little bit more depth, but this is what happens when we have a world without work. And I remember when I looked at that, I thought, what in the world can that be talking about? Well, as I read it, what I realized, this is when everything that happens can be automated. And when there is no need for what a tremendous portion of our population is doing and won't be doing in 10 years. So I'm going to talk more about that, but this is coming, folks. And one of the things, if we are wise, one of the things I believe we'll do is we will look very carefully at every action, work-related, other areas as well, but certainly work-related, that we do, and ask ourselves the question of 2021, which is, how do I automate this? Because you want to be ahead of this game. I can't imagine anything much worse than having somebody deciding to automate what I do and me not being aware that that was even a potential occurrence that I would encounter. So this is this gives you an idea of my mindset framework. Let me dig into a couple of other kinds of issues. So I have a very short video, which I am not going to play, but I want to encourage you to look at, and I will put it in the chat box. How many of you know Dr. Jose Estevez? Does anybody know him? He has been putting out for about a little over a decade now, a book called Did You Know? a video called Did You Know? Probably has a book too. He teaches in Madrid at one of the most world famous universities. And he is really amazing. This video that I'm going to tell you about is 6 minutes in length. And I just couldn't fit it in, but I thought I'm not taking that slide out because this is really important. So it is, if you go on YouTube and you search for Did You Know 2019 Technology. So it's already over a year old, but I will tell you, be sure that you're sitting down when you watch it. There's no narration. It all comes up on the screen. It is without a doubt the most fascinating video I've ever watched in my life. His metrics are no way to argue with them. And it actually lays out where we are and what we're going to be contending with. And he does a great thing in there are two things that really strike me. He talks about China and the fact that China has more honor students than we in the US have children. And that's a gigantic shift. So that is one. He's got, he does a thing right at the end that talks about in the 6 minutes of this presentation, this many babies were born in the US, this many babies were born in China, this many babies were born in India. And if those numbers don't rock you, I gotta tell you, you gotta check your pulse because it is absolutely incredible. And his metrics are pretty much indisputable in my opinion. So I encourage you very much to just, get some popcorn or a glass of wine or something and sit down and enjoy that. I have watched that, I'm sure, 50 times. And every time I do it, I'll find something that just sticks home based on something that I'm experiencing. So one of the things that's also in that video is that we have, for the first time in the history of our country, 5 generations in our workplace. And he has a very clever, he being Dr. Estevez, he has a very clever graphic that shows that the folks born 28 to 45, their favorite communication tool would be to write me. The next group would call me. The next group would email me. The next group would text me. And we're not sure exactly what the Z's are going to opt for. One thing we do know about the Z's are just coming into our workplace in large numbers. One of the things that we do know is they're going to restore craftspersonship. So if you've ever tried to find a finished carpenter, or if you've looked closely for an HVAC person and had trouble getting one scheduled, we're going to find a lot of folks who are opting for that work, and we need them in this country. So I, for one, say yay. The issue, though, that drives that is that the group called the Z's, that group is saying, why should we go to college? And this is an almost direct quote from a great number of them. I got YouTube, I got Google. What more do I need? And I always love it when I have some folks in that age group in a workshop that I'm doing or in a conversation anywhere, and they'll say, what did you do, BG, before Google? And I said, well, I don't want to scare you, but we went to the library. And I have had so many of these folks say to me, I've never been inside a library. So this is, when we talk about some of the challenges that we're going to face, when you're talking about as an executive or as a leader of any type, when we're talking about how do I communicate with the individuals who are basically making up my organization, however that is structured, how do I touch these people with all these different communication needs? Communication has always been the number one issue that has derailed effectiveness. And over the next decade or two, it is going to grow exponentially. So one of the things that you can, I hope, take away from this presentation is that our concentration on all of the soft skills, but most definitely on the communication aspects, is something that is going to be a primary consideration for all of us. So innovation, gosh, innovation's been a topic of discussion for as long as I can remember. So we know its importance. In a lot of places, people say, "Oh, we've got to have more. We've got to have more innovation. We really need innovation." And I will tell you that what that says to me about the future of work is we need to look at our most basic organizations. And let me just start with our school systems. People who know me well, like the Debbie Marizics and the Macos of this world, know that I will not drive to any place around 3 p.m. where there is a great school ever, Monday through Friday. And the reason I cannot is they make the little kids look like robots. They line them up, they got their hand on the shoulder or the belt of the person in front of them, and we start them marching. Do not think that that message is lost on these folks when they get to be adults and line up again, all the while saying we need more innovation. Innovation does not happen if you don't color outside the lines. Now, do I want kids running off in traffic? No, obviously not. But I think that we have to look at new ways to start the innovation process in our most basic, our schools, our churches, our civic institutions, our city governments, all of those. We have to ensure that innovation becomes an even more integral part, true innovation. And I put that last bullet point here. I judge for a wonderful organization, and this is part of a Richardson group, which is called Tech Titans. And in fact, Debbie Marizic was for the very first 2 years, I believe, was the community hero for that, which is pretty nifty. And one of the areas I often judge is the new innovation in small business. And I'm sorry, it's just the new innovation. I shouldn't say small business, because one of the things that happens is people put as innovation something that really is just an incremental advancement. And when I think of innovation, I think of something that's pretty much earth-shattering, world-shaking, kind of like Apple Watches or Google. So those are the kinds of things. Driverless cars, they sort of scare me a little bit too, but I guess I'll get over it. But the fact of the matter is, we don't even have a good sound definition of innovation. And that is going to be an issue in the area of work over the next decade or two. We've got to decide how much funding we're going to put behind it, how much actual support we're going to put behind it, and what we actually think it is. And are we willing to give up control enough to let true innovation happen? Because every bit of control just lowers the potential for the innovation that we say we so desperately seek. So I will tell you that seeking innovation is one thing. Again, we talk about it a lot. I don't think we're there. I do believe that we are edging closer, but this is where we need some exponential jumps. And I submit that we're going to get a real taste of that. And it is not always going to feel comfortable with us. When I think about a driverless 18-wheeler, I got to tell you, I'm really glad I don't have that Volkswagen Beetle still. But that is, this is something that we are going to most definitely need to put into our conversations. I guess I'd be dangerous if I was working this mouse right? So I borrow this particular slide, but I will tell you that its impact on me was dramatic. So let me give you just the thumbnail. This is from the census. And if you look at the numbers that are along the right side, starting with 80.6, going to 12.0 and so forth, what this is, that is the percentage of US firms that fit the definitions in the center. And if you look along the left side, this is the number of employees that particular portion of those represented by the census, this is the number of employees that they have. So if you look at 80.6% of the workforce, we're talking about the workforce of the future, this is today, I don't see any signs of this letting up. In fact, I think it's going to grow a lot. These folks have no employees. They may have contractors, they may use interns, they may have family members who work with and for them, all those things, but they do not have employees. 80 points, almost 81% of all US companies. If you go all the way to the top, I think this has jumped a little bit, but on this particular example, slightly under 1% have 500 or more employees. If you think about who got all of the money in the PPP example and all, a lot of those were folks who had gigantic organizations. That left all the rest of these people without access to that money. And we are bearing the brunt of the discontent that is related to the decisions made about that. One of the things, so I'll tell you a very personal experience. I was talking about these numbers in another networking group recently, and a guy who probably a lot of you know, a guy named Bill Wallace, turned around and looked at me and he said, "O'Neill, what you're telling me is that small business in the United States of America, that is the GDP." And I said, "Yep, that's it." And so what is really, but the press and the emphasis and the resources and the assistance goes to that top 1 or 2%. And that is something, so when we look at the future of work, my belief is that this group has found their voice. So get to, find a small business owner and get to know them. They're going to be your new best friend. And it is growing. This is not lessening. This is, and just so you have just one more statistic for you, 64% of the businesses in the United States of America today have 20 or fewer employees. 64%. And we don't have the new census out, but my hunch is that will grow there as well. Just want you to think about that in terms of your decisions. Do I want a world without that top 1%? Nope, I like them a lot. That's great. Do I want appropriate recognition, though, right alongside that for all of us who are working in these small businesses, who are self-employed, or who today, whether you're self-employed or not, if you're working from home, it feels like you are. And we have not set up the systems that do that. So when you talk with your representative, federal, state, local, when you see your mayor on Zoom or elsewhere, be sure that you make your needs known in the capacity in which you currently operate. I happen to be a part of a group this very week, and we talked to a couple of senators. And I will tell you that one senator really stunned me with the lack of knowledge about what small business is experiencing. So once again, I'm not sure where they've been, but they have not been looking at small business. And these numbers are going to guide the world of work over at least the next decade, perhaps longer. So I encourage you to continue to explore those. The big five. So this is kind of a funny story. And I've got to watch my time here so that I make sure I get through all of this. And by the way, if I don't get to your question, I put my contact information in the chat. By all means, do not hesitate. So just in case I run over, be sure, and I want to be sure that I get your questions. I haven't seen anybody asking, so I'm hoping that you will if you have them though. So working for the big five, these are the companies that are going to be automated. So here's my deal. When I was a vice president, I had a very uncomfortable experience where an employee told me, and God love the courage of this person, and said to me, "You have forgotten what it felt like." Now I've been working, this is my 65th year of working experience. I started when I was 13. And I will tell you, this person said, "You have forgotten what it's like to be at the bottom." That really shook me to my core, because that is not something I would want anyone to ever see in me. So I made this kind of pact with myself. And every year or so, I would take and have done this for years, I would take a first line job. I sold clothes at Chico's. that was a terrible experiment. I just handed them my check every week when it came because I had bought everything in the store. But over this last Christmas holiday, I worked for Amazon. And I want to tell you, over and above my disappointment that I didn't get to see all of their robots, here's the thing. There is nothing that I did there that could not be automated. Nothing. Those are $15 an hour jobs. Someone has said to me that those are the burger flipper jobs of the future. They're not, because they're going to go away. There is nothing. The first night I was there, I moved approximately 150-pound or greater boxes. I was bruised from the tips of my fingers to my elbows. And I have not been that sore in a lot of years, I will tell you. But I will say again that all the jobs in these 5 companies, those are the jobs that are going to go away. In the video that I referenced to you, one of the points, and I think I have it on a slide also, is that we're going to lose about 70 million jobs to automation in the United States. We are going to gain 130 million. The difference is you're going to have to be skilled enough to pick up that delta. And that's another thing that we are going to be faced with as executives and leaders over the next decade. So one of my questions to everybody is, can you code? I don't know how many of you have done this, but you probably want to take a coding course. General Assembly is the one that I recommend because they are fast and they are good. So I'll tell you how I came to this. About 3 years ago, I keynoted for an annual conference. We were still face-to-face. So I was in Atlanta speaking for APNA. And APNA is the Association of Professional Nanny Agencies. Who knew? And before, when I was putting together my presentation, I said, what kind of challenges are you facing? They said, we cannot find people to fill these $100,000 a year jobs. At that point, I was thinking about some times when my cash flow was low. I thought $100,000 to be a nanny, shoot, I could do that, you know? I said, well, why are you having trouble filling them? And they said, because the families who want to hire these $100,000 a year nannies have 2 requirements that we have a hard time meeting. I said, what are they? One is that the person who is hired needs to be bilingual, with the language of preference being Mandarin. And I don't know if you've ever tried to learn Mandarin, but that is not the easiest thing you'll ever do. I was surprised by Mandarin being the demand, but that tells you when you look at the birth rate in China, you know, and the power shifts that a lot of people forecast. Let me tell you something, Mandarin is not a bad bet. The second thing is you have to be able to teach their preschool age children to code. If you can do both those things, you can probably get hired as a $100,000 a year nanny. So one of the things, and that is not limited to the nanny industry, it's just a handy example for me to think. So I raced right out and signed up for a Python coding class. Let me tell you folks, I have never failed a class in my life. I am now taking remedial Python. So if you are right-brained, which I am, coding is a whole different experience. I'm hoping, and please think good thoughts for me, that I have better luck with it my second time out. But if I have an encouragement for you, and I don't care what kind of work you're in or what you plan to do over the next decade, it is my most sincere wish that you take a coding class and that you pass it.
Lynn, we need to make a rapid descent here. We're at.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay, so last slide. I listened to Seth Godin talk. Thank you so much too, Dave. I heard Seth Godin speak for about 25 minutes, 2 or 3 weeks ago. He said, he made the point about soft skills that I've emphasized. He said the #1 skill, if you're looking at adding to your skill bank over the next decade, listening. And so I've got his quote here, and he talks about hearing happens when we're able to recognize a sound. Listening happens when we understand what it means. And that is a very wonderful distinction for all of us to contemplate. We do not want to be like Limu Emu, with our head in the sand. We don't want to be like Blockbuster. And I have a really important statement on here. We cannot avoid the changes that are going to affect our work. So what we want to do is we want to anticipate them, and we want to ensure that we are on top of these, that we are ahead of this game. I hope the light bulbs have gone on somewhat in this presentation. I thank you for your time, and in anticipation of your questions that you're going to send me, I will look forward to getting to know you better. Thank you for the opportunity to present this, and back to you, Dave.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Lynn. That was, man. I'm gonna have to catch my breath. You really covered a lot of information. Sorry to, I really try to be respectful. We will leave for those that here. We will leave the mic open, so if you do have questions, and Lynn can hang around a few minutes afterwards,
I'd be happy to.
we will definitely open the mic. So if you have some burning questions or comments or whatever, we'll do that. And again, Lynn, thank you. Your investment in the group has been phenomenal, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
For those that are looking to next week, I'm just posting in the chat for next week. I decided to do that. Okay, so Taylor Longacre will be our speaker next week, and talking on kind of on the similar theme as to how to stay connected and how to get your message out in a virtual environment. So, in the world that we're in, right? So obviously things are changing. Everybody's thinking, and it's a beautiful thing when we're all. That's what I love about this group, and I love about each and every one of you. It's, everybody's warriors here. There you are, Darren. Good to see you, buddy. You found your camera. All right.
There's actually a little switch on the side that was turned off.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we found it. So it's great to see you, buddy. We've been missing you. And so we are at 12:59. Lloyd, did you have something like earth-shattering you needed to share, or you want to wait for the open mic?
I just wanted to say a comment. Listening is how you show people you love them. And love is the beginning of all great business. You got to love your customers. If you don't love your customers, you're in deep pinching. And listening, you really got to learn how to listen. It's difficult. I'm reading a book on that. It's called Listening for Success. So
yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that, Lloyd, but that's okay. You're doing great. Sorry, we have fun here. We love each other. Well, anyway, we are at 1 o'clock, and so we are officially adjourned. However, as I said, I'll leave the mic open. Never want to end without just thanking each of you for investing your most valuable asset in this group, which is your time, because no matter, Bill Gates can't buy yesterday. So this time we've spent, Liz, Lynn, I totally appreciate your making the investment, not only to share with us, but prepare for us. And everybody that's here, you don't know how much I appreciate the investment. Esther, I'm looking forward to kind of hearing what your world is like out there in Washington. I spent a lot of time in that area down at McCord Air Force Base and out there, so not too recently, since my son-in-law is still out there. So anyway, but look forward to that. And anybody has any other questions or comments or anything, I'll be here, and I'll keep the mic open until everybody departs. Thanks again.
Great job, Lynn.
Thank you so much, Randy.
All right, guys, y'all have a great week.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Take care, Lloyd.
So good to see you, Lynn.
Oh, man, it's wonderful to see you. I'll take a camera if I can't get a hug. So, okay.
Really good and very informative. Appreciate it.
Stick with us, Esther.
Thank you.
So, Darren, are you doing okay? How's Fast Signs going? I haven't gotten over there to see you yet.
I'm doing okay. Business is a little slow, but I'm constantly going out canvassing around, and as soon as I have lunch today, then I'm going to go out and do some more canvassing. But I'm having fun.